Hello everyone. So here I'm recording a video for your assignment that was completed, which was the assignment number 1, which was focused on setting up the company. So this video is something that will guide you through the process of what you should have done to start the company from scratch when you're given company information. And then what you're trying to do is set up the general ledger module, set up the chart of account, and to the opening balances. So if you go back to your textbook, this assignment that I have uploaded on your Blackboard, it was focused on setting up the company from scratch based on the information that's provided to you. So you need to understand what the company background is, what type of departments they are, what type of GL they need to set up. The key thing is that you make sure that you understand the steps, what you need to do, and then follow it step by step to complete your assignment. And again, your test is not going to be as simple as you see it on your assignment, so it is important for you to understand all this step, and then if it gets complicated, you want to make sure that you understand the basics, and if you make less mistake, you get less marks, but as long as you do follow the steps, you should be okay. So the whole purpose of this video is for you to go back to the steps that you should have taken. And if there was any mistakes that you have done in your assignment, not to worry too much. You will have some additional practice homework for you to do, which will not only focus from chapter 1 to 4, but it will be focused from chapter 1 all the way to chapter 8. So you get to practice what the full setup process, and then after that you will have the lecture which is posted separately, which will focus on the GL transaction. That'll probably be the second step that you have to do once your trial balance is ready. So if you want to redo this assignment after you listen to the video, you're most welcome to do that. But I recommend you, if you have done this already a couple of times, I recommend you to focus on the other homework question that I'm going to assign you. So for you to see this video, the best thing to do is have this report printed, or you would have saved it on a PDF. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this file on my computer. What I always recommend when you're doing these kind of assignment at home, either have it on 2 screens or have that assignment printed and have it with you on the other side of the screen. Okay, just 1 second. Close this. Okay, so I will move this one on my other screen, so you don't need to see that. So what's important is, let me just show you guys the assignment. So you're given the instructions. I tried to be very clear with my instructions, but it is your responsibility to make sure you read them. You don't need to read word to word, but skim them through before you start this exercise or the test or the assignment or the homework that's given to you. So the assignment is focused on setting up the company, setting up the reminders, setting up the GL, setting up the chart of accounts, and enter the opening balances. So this is the main objective. So you complete the task in the listed steps. So it is important you move from one step to another. Don't try to jump, because if you try to do that, you may mess up the step and then you may not be able to go back. You'll be PDFing each of the reports, so it is important for you to understand how you PDF the reports that you're given, how to rename them, to make sure the instructions are followed properly. At the end of the assignment or the homework, get a habit of doing a database dump in a separate folder that you will put in on the C drive or on the USB drive that you may have. And if you're doing it at home, I recommend you to just save it on the C drive if you're working at the college, and then after that post it on the H drive or on your USB if you wanted to save it for yourself. Company background. So this company was started by a few friends, and the company name is A1 Insurance Brokerage, and then you have your name at the end. This company has 2 divisions. One is personal, which is 100 division number, and then a business, which is XXS as a division number, and then this XXX represent 3 digit of your student number. So for this assignment video that I'm posting, I'm going to assume that my student number is 999. So my division number 2, which is business, will be 999. You're preparing accounting using Sage 50 in 2022. Now you're moving into 2023 and decide to switch to Sage 300. For this exercise, you'll be using the database called SAM Inc. There are two databases, SAM Inc. and SAM Limited. Doesn't matter which one you use. If you're given SAM Inc., so if you have it in the software, you will use that. I'm going to skip the objectives, which we did talk about it earlier. The reports, there will be different reports that you'll be saved during the time. At the end, you only need to submit what I ask you to submit. So just make sure that the instructions are read very carefully. So now we're going to start the file. So first step I ask you to do is create these two folders. So I'm going to go into my desktop right here, and I'm going to create a new folder. And over here, I'm going to call this exactly what I say here. Report your name. So say you create the first folder like this. Then I'm going to create the second folder where I'm going to dump my file at the end. So now I'm done with that step. Now select the company SAM Limited and a session date at January 1, 2023. So now if you are doing this at home, it should not be any different than what you are doing at the college. I have launched the Sage 50 already on my computer, so I may not able to do that step. So you click launch right here. Once you click launch, let me try doing it again, see what message I get. So technically it's already launched, so it doesn't show me that line item at the bottom. So what it did was it just opened the file, but I opened it on my other side. Okay, so there it is. So now the company is opened. So now what you have to do is, because we are doing this from scratch, so I'm not going to show you the instructions now. I'm going to keep the instructions on the other side of the screen, and I'll read it as I move forward. You should have the instructions on your end already. So here I'm asking you to do SAM Limited. Yeah, it doesn't matter which one you pick, so I'm going to pick SAM Limited for this case because that's what I put in my instruction. So the session date we're doing is 2023-0101, and I press OK. This is a brand new company, so it's going to ask me to create the admin services, and it's going to ask me my session date, the fiscal date. The session date was January 31st, and the fiscal period starting date we're going to keep as January 2023. The dates looks a little bit different because that's the setting on my computer. So if you're working on the college, it will show up the settings that is set up on that PC. And then if you're working from home, you will have the setup in a different way. So if you're confused, always click on this calendar icon on the side and select the date. So now it's asking me to enter the company name. Very important that your name and the student number is there. So here I'm just going to leave the name as your name. I'm not going to change it. And here instead of putting XXX, I'll put the student number, which I assume is 999. And here under the name, put your name, just so that way I know it is your file. And then I ask you to select the currency. Don't worry about the address. If you're not given, if I ask you to create certain address, such as in this example, I ask you to enter Humber College address, you can enter that here. For me, it won't matter too much because I'm not going to ask you to print company's profile. So I'll just put Toronto, Canada, and then what's important is the currency. So we're going to select Canadian currency, CAD, and then press OK. Now your profile is created and you have admin services right here. The next step, I ask you to set up a monthly reminder. So monthly reminder, you go under common services, go under the schedule, and here is your schedule. Here we're going to set up the reminder. Nothing different than what you have done in your chapter 1. So here we call this monthly, and here we say monthly reminder, and then we're going to say all users, and here we say monthly, and it asks you to do is send a reminder 3 days prior to the due date. So every month on last day of the month, I said, so we'll select last day, not 30th. And then I ask you to do it 3 days before, so the schedule start will be 31st. Okay, and then monthly, every month in a month, 3 days before it will send a reminder. It goes for all users. Once I'm happy with all the setup, I click add, and then I close the screen. So that part is done. The reminder is done. Now the next part is step number 6, activate the GL module. So to activate the GL module, you go into admin services, go into data activation, and here it asks you that you want to create a backup. We don't need to worry too much about that. So we'll simply click proceed, and we say, well, yes, we have the backup ready. Then it's going to ask you which GL. So we'll select General Ledger 6.8, next, next, and click activate. It says activated, and now I close it. So my General Ledger is set up, which is right here. So next few steps, we're going to focus on the GL setup. So GL setup is all right here. Again, we don't want to jump the steps. We want to make sure we focus on one step at a time. First, I ask you to modify the GL option, which is right here. So I click on the option, and I said do not allow the ability to post previous transaction. So I go in. This one we will come back, default closing account, so we'll skip that for now. Say do not post in the previous batches. See, it's already selected, so not selected, so we won't worry too much about that. So I technically said do not do any of those things, so we'll skip that. And then default, okay, that's fine. Keep the years for 7 years. So here we want the information only for 7 years, so we'll change that. I did not mention anything about the default source code, so we can skip that part. But if I ask you to change a default source code to any particular GL, then you can click on this browser and select the appropriate one. So you know what, I'm gonna do select the GL general entries. So by default, it will pick up this source code. I did not mention, so you don't need to worry about it. If you don't do that, that's fine as well. The next part is the segments. I want 2 segments, and this is where some of you guys made a mistake, but it is very crucial that you pay attention to this particular step. So if you pay here attention to this step where I ask you to create 2 segments, segment 1 is accounts with 4 digits, segment 2 is your division for 3 digits. So that's what I asked you to do. So here segment number 1, I said do it accounts, and then we do 4 digits, and then segment 2 we will name that as a division, and here we will do 3 digits. Now system needs to know which one is account from these 2 segments, so here you need to identify which one of those segments is your account, because accounts are mandatory to have. If you don't have the accounts, then you won't be able to create the account. That's how important it is, because when you create an account, first and most important thing is you have to give an account number. So this segment number 1 is going to be becoming mandatory for each account to have, and then segment number 2 is your option as whether you want to have that or not. So for this step, it is important you select the segment that is considered to be account, and this part once you select, you cannot change. So in this case, I said the segment 1 is account. So here from the list, I said this number 1 segment is my account number. Once that part is done, I click save. Now you see that you can change it. And now we click close. So my segment GL option is done. The next part, I ask you to create the following 2 divisions. So where do I go to create divisions? Now that was a little tricky because you need to understand where the segment codes need to be defined. So segment codes are defined under the segment codes. So when I go into the segment codes, it will have the division listed here. So here I ask you to create two divisions, right? Because segment number 2 was the division, so I asked you to create two divisions. So you need to go in to a GL segment code. So over here you need to create code number 1, which I said 100, and we will call them personal insurance. And then you create segment number 2, or this yes, segment number 2. So I will press insert to go to the next line, and here I assume my 3 digit of this, the last 3 digit of your student number is 999, so I put that in and I call that business insurance. So now I created two divisions which are considered to be my segment codes 100 and 999. Once that part is done, I click save and then I close it. So now I create the segment codes for my division. Next part I ask you to do is create two account structure. So account structures are right here. So here I need to create two account structure. One is ACC, and I clearly identify that for this particular one you need to identify only accounts. So create two account structure. One is ACC, which only has an account. Another one is DIV, which will have accounts, and department or division, the one that we set it up. So here we put accounts. So this one should only have accounts. I click add, then I click add for new, and this one I want division. For division I want account and then division. So this is the order that I want my division accounts going to look like, and I click add. Now I'm done with my account structures. The next part I ask you to create 3 different source codes. The source codes are right here, so I double click on the source code, and they are the simplest thing to add. So you put GL, represents the general ledger, and then you put the code, which is the last 2 digits, cash receipts, and I click add. Then you go to another one, we do GL, CD. It asked me that whether I want the previous one because I put a wrong number. So I said no, don't save that. And here I call them cash disbursement, and I click add. Then another one is GLBC, and I call that as a bank charges, and I add. Okay, so I added 3 different source codes. Now I finish adding the source code. The next step I ask you to do is change the print destination. So this is a pretty standard thing that I ask everybody to do, is change the destination to preview, have it as a paper size, orientation, and the paper size, default paper size to be A4, and I press OK. Now I'm going to ask you to save 2 different reports. One is a segment code report, another one is a source code report. So to save the report, you go into GL reports, and here we're going to click, first report is a segment codes. So here I'm going to find segment codes right here, and then it's going to say I want all the segments, and I click print. So here is my segment report look like, segment codes look like, so 100 and 999, and I click, instead of printing, we're gonna do a export. So you will be exporting the reports. We're gonna skip the printing of these reports. So we printing instead of printing, we're doing export. I say all the pages, and then it's going to ask you the location, and the location is going to be the one that we created in the very first step. And here I'm gonna call this is R1 segment codes. I'm putting this in a different order. I don't have the permission to save. Okay, so I need to create those two folders right here. It's a little bit of an IT thing. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go into my C drive, create a folder here, the two folders that we need. I'm going to create a folder called accounting 204. So I will create those two folders inside that. So the step that I did in step number 1, I'm just going to relocate my folders. And I will create that folders right here. So I'll create this folder and then I'll create another one for my database dump. And then inside my report now I will save the first report. And now I close it and I close that again. And now I go to the next one, which I ask is the source code. So source codes are right here. And I know that I created 3, but there are a few other ones that are there as well. So I click print, then I print again. So it takes me to the other screen, so I have to move it here. So now I click export. And then I'll give a location to save that file. So here I'll call them R2 and I'll call that is source codes. Okay, so close. Now I'm done with these reports. So now I'm going to move on to the next step where I ask you to create the trial balance. So the next step is you provide a trial balance in an appendix B, appendix A. Based on that trial balance, create all the required GL account. So this is the trial balance that's given to you. So you are going to start creating these accounts. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit faster, but you don't have to follow my speed. So what I recommend is to just look at 1 or 2 accounts that I'm going to create. Then I'm going to be quiet for a bit and then I will record all the other accounts. So I'll just talk about it. I will talk about the first 2 accounts when I create it. The rest you guys can do it and watch it on my screen, me doing it step by step. So to create the accounts, you go into the GL accounts. You can either click on the chart of accounts or you click on the accounts. So I recommend just going into the accounts directly because we know that we don't have any accounts. So now in regards to the sequence, you decide how the sequence is going to be. So my recommendation is to jump every 1,000 from one class to another. So I'll say 1,000 for the bank, 2,000 for the liabilities, 3,000 for equity, 4,000 for revenue, 5,000 for expenses. Unless I mention the type, the account number segments, how you want that to be, then you follow it. Otherwise, just use the same sequence. So here, the first account, I'm going to say 1001, and I'm going to call this is general bank account. General bank account and structure code, very important. So we'll say ACC because it's just an account and the normal balance is debit. It's a balance sheet account and the group is cash or cash equivalent. And nothing to be done on this side. And I click add. Next account is my account receivable, so I'll leave a little bit of a space and I'll say 1100 and I call that account receivable. Account receivable, again ACC, debit balance, balance sheet account. From the account class, I'm going to say account receivable and click add. And that's how you're going to create few of these accounts. I'm going to finish creating the asset liability accounts. So HST on purchases is a contra account. So even though it is still a liability account, we're going to put no balance as a debit. We'll still put as other current liabilities. Okay, I made a mistake on the last one. The share capital is supposed to be a credit balance. So this one, let me change this, and then we'll go back and change the other one. Okay, go back to 3001. This is supposed to be a credit balance, share capital. So again, there's nothing wrong. You can always go back and change the account description or anything else. But as soon as you start changing the account number, it will create a brand new account. So you can't change the account number, but you can change anything else. So next one I have is a revenue account. So now for revenue account, it has a division. So we don't have ACC, it will be a division account. So first account we're going to do is 4,000, which is the account number. Then the last 3 digits I need to identify is the division number. So I have a personal insurance, which is 4,000 dash. Remember the personal was 100 as a division number. So here I call this revenue, personal insurance. No balance is credit, and this is my income statement account. So I'll select this as a revenue. And now I'm going to make a mistake so that way you guys will see why this and this, if they don't match with each other, it will create an error message. So you see how I put an account number as first 4 digit and the last 3 digit, whereas I forgot to change the structure code from ACC to DIV. So what it's going to do is if I click add, it will give me this message saying this doesn't match the format of the structure code that ACC, because the ACC is only account number. So I forgot to change that, not a problem. I changed that to DIV and I click add, it will accept it because DIV was first 4 digit for account and last 3 digit of your division. So I click save, that means that is saved. Then I'm going to do a next one, which is 4,000 for business insurance, and the second division that I created for the business was 3 digit of your student number, which was in my case is 999. So I selected that, everything else remains same. I click save. The next account I have is telephone expenses. So now I'm going to go into a 5,000 range, 5,000-100 for telephone expenses, personal insurance, and this is also division, but the no balance is debit, and it is not revenue, it's my operating expense or fixed charges. And I click add. Then I have 5,200. This one is, well, it's not 200, I forgot, because the second division number I have is not 200, it's 999. Even if I try putting 200, it will say that this division or the segment number is not, it doesn't exist, so it will give that message. So now because since I changed the account number, it said what happened with the previous account that you typed in 5,200. Say, do you want to still add that? I'm going to say no, because that was just by mistake. So I press no, so it didn't save the previous number. So now it's saving 5,999, division, debit, income taxes, fixed charges, and click add. And I'm done. So I'm created the accounts based on the trial balance that was given. And I close that. Now, again, we're going back to the instructions and say, what is my next instruction? So I created the trial balance based on the chart of account given in Appendix A. Next step it asks me to do is on January 1, you rented an office and the cost of the rent must be shared among both the departments. Based on the learning from Chapter 3, create appropriate accounts to allocate the rent expense between personal and business 60% and 40%. Okay, So I gave you a hint in this example, in this step, saying you're required to create 3 accounts. I'm not going to give you that hint in your test. You need to understand I ask you to create an allocation between 2 accounts, 60 and 40% between both the divisions. So in that case, you need to create 3 accounts. So how do we start that? You create the division account first. First, you create a division account for first division, which is 100, and for the second division, 999. And then once you're done, then you create another account, which will be the allocation account, and then allocate that expense between both these accounts that you created in the previous step by 60% and 40%. So again, we can assign any number that we want. So I'm going to do is 5200-100, and I'll call this rent personal insurance. Again, the structure code is going to be DIV. No balance is debit in income statement, and I'll create the class as the fixed charges. Nothing to do with the auto allocation because that is the main account that will be auto allocated. This is just a regular account, and I click add. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the other account, 52-200, and this one is going to be rent for business insurance. Business insurance, and everything else remains same. So create the 2 separate accounts for the division. Now I need to create an account which will be just an account by itself, which will be, and I'll call this rent office, and that will be division debit. So no, it's not a division, it's going to be just an account, just with the 4 digit. And now the only difference here we're going to do is we're going to make this an auto allocation, then come to the allocation, and saying the source code for the allocation we want to select is the allocation code RT. And how do I want the system to allocate this account? I want this account to be allocated between 52-100, 60%, and press insert to go to the next line, 52-100, 999, and that will be 40%. It must add 200% to make this account work. Okay, so you put these accounts, put the percentage, and click add. So now we create 3 accounts for the allocation purposes. So now I'm done with step number 13, and then in step number 14, what I ask you to do is, based on that trial balance in Appendix A, create the journal entry to record the opening balances of all the accounts. So now the next step is creating an opening entry. So now this was a very simple example because you only have 4 accounts that you need to do the entry for. Okay, so you only need to do an entry with 4 accounts, put the accounts on the right sides, and then you have debit equals to your credit, and then the entry you will do is going to be on December 31st, 2022. Now before you record the entry, you want to make sure that your fiscal year is 2022. You can go into the GL setup, go under the options, and then look at the posting. It will show you what your current fiscal year is. Right here is 2022. So that means we're okay to record the entry for December 31st, 2022. So I close that. Now to record the entry, I go into GL transaction, go into a batch list. There is no batch here for me. So what I'm going to do is create a brand new batch. And once I have the batch here, I'm going to do is I'll call this opening entry. And then here I'm going to call this again opening entry. As I mentioned, this is a description of the batch. This is a description of your journal entry. And here I can just put more detail, opening entry based on the trial balance on December 31st, 2022. I like to put as much detail as I can, so that way in the future when I come back it will have the information. Document date and the posting date, we're going to select the same date that we have a trial balance for. By default, it's select the source code as GE, which we can leave it as it is. Unless you create a separate code for your setup transactions, then we can select the setup code as a source code. Then we come into a journal entry. The first account we had was bank account with 20,000. So the normal balance for the bank account is debit. So here when I give you a trial balance, I clearly mentioned that all of these accounts has their normal balance. So that means the bank account is debit, so I debit $20,000. Go to the second line and I select the account furniture and fixtures. So I'm going to go into the browser, find my furniture and fixture account, and then put 25,000 debit. Then the next account I have is a bank loan. So I go insert again, find the bank loan account, and the bank loan account has a credit balance. So the normal balance is credit, so I put 25,000 as a credit. Then I have a next account which is the share capital. So I go into the next line and selected the share capital account, which I assume was 3001. Yes. And that will be 20,000. Okay. Now I've completed the entry, and you guys will see at the bottom your debit is 45,000, your credit is 45,000. What's important is that your out of balance has to be 0. If you have an out of balance account, if you try to post them, the system will not post your entry. So be careful with that. Now once you're finished, you click add. Once you added this entry, so it takes you to entry number 2. You don't have an entry number 2 to do, so we will simply close this batch. Once the batch is closed, you will see all the batches right here. In our case, we only have one. Now we want to post this batch. To post the batch, we click right to post, double click on it to change it from no to yes, and then make sure this is selected and you click post. Now posting sequence 1 is completed and you close that. Now all of a sudden the status from change from opened to posted. Now the entry is posted, you close that. Okay. Again, for these assignments or for your homework as well as for your test, you need to just make sure you follow the instructions. So I don't know what I need to do. Where do I go? I go back to my instruction and say, okay, I've done the opening entry. What does it say for me to do in the next step? So here I'm done creating a journal entry, recorded them, and my trial balance is updated. Now what I ask you to do is print these reports into the folder that you created in the step number 1. Okay, I did say R1, 2, 3 because in the previous assignment that I asked you to submit online, I wasn't asking you to submit this. So I'm going to assume this was R1, this one R2, and this is 3, 4, and 5. So I ask you to PDF these 3 reports. So first one is a chart of account long form. All the reports are found in the GL reports. Here we go into chart of accounts. And here by default it picks up short form. I don't want the short form. I ask you the long form, so you must submit the long form chart of account. And I click print. Once I click print, it will show me your chart of accounts on screen. I always like to see before I post or before I print it. So I look at this report. Now I click export PDF, and then it's asked me the location. I have to press OK 2 times. Let's say R3 chart of account, same long form. Save. Then I close that and close this. The next part I ask you to do is print a trial balance. Print another chart of accounts. This time I ask you to print the allocation account. So here I select allocation and I click print. Now I see all the allocation account that I created. In this example was only one, which is right here, and again I save the report. And I'm going to call this R4 chart of account allocation. Close and close that. Now the next part is I ask you a trial balance on December 31st, 2022. So trial balance. The date is Okay, somehow I'm not able to show the date. So when I click on this, it takes me to the other place. So I change the year to 2022 and select that number 12 period to have it this. So if you don't select on this calendar, you can type this year as 2022 and the period as 12, and then you click print. Then you see the trial balance with the amounts that you posted in the entry that we did in the last step. So here's my trial balance, very small, but that's what I asked you to do. So you will simply export this, and then that's okay, and then give a location. Now this is report number 5, and it's a trial balance. You can put the date, whatever I mentioned. I said TB December 31st 2022. That's your R5. So now you're done. In this exercise or the assignment, I did not ask you to create a new fiscal year. I usually, as soon as you've done the opening entry, I always ask to create a new fiscal year. I'm going to show you in this video to how to create a new fiscal year as well. So that way, if you are doing the steps in the next class, you will be able to understand how to create a new fiscal year. Now, before I create a new fiscal year, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to set up link the closing account to the retained earning. That's number 1 step before you do before you close the fiscal year. So if I ask you to set up the closing account, you go into GL setup. Under the option, you go into the account and select the closing account to be the retained earning account. So when you click on this browser, it's only going to show you the accounts that are retained earning account. So we only have one account, which is 3200 as retained earning. We save it, and we select it, and then we save and close. Now once that is done, now you can close the fiscal year. So when you close a fiscal year, you're technically creating a new fiscal year, which will close 2022 and open up the 2023 fiscal year to record transaction for 2023. So here in this example, what we're going to do is we're going to journal ledger, and then go into periodic processing and click create a new fiscal year. It gives you a warning saying, have you created a backup before a fiscal year? We can ignore it because we know what we did and we don't want a backup. But if you are doing a big assignment or you're doing it at home, you want to create a backup, you're most welcome to create a separate backup and name it appropriately and save it in a separate place. So here we say that's fine, we're going to process it. And once the process is done, you say new fiscal year has been created 2023 and 0 transaction has been removed. Because remember we said 7 years of transaction need to be kept. So if there was information from the 1 year that the system need to delete, it will delete it. It will put a message here saying those number of transactions are created and those fiscal years has been removed, just to make sure that we only keep 7 years in the system. When a company like this do this, so they want to make sure that they have a backup of the previous year information. Now the new year is created, you can start recording transaction for 2023. So we close it and we close that as well. Now if you want to check, you can go back to GL setup, under the option, under the posting, now you see your new fiscal year is 2023. Now I am done. So what I want you to do is, once you've finished it, we're going to create a database dump of the file that we're working on. So I'm going to go in to a database dump, which is admin services, database dump, and I'm going to make sure that I select the file that I'm working on, which was SAM Limited. It will always change the name to your name of the company that you have created. And then pick up a location. So I created a location on my C drive under ACCT 204 right here. Oh, this one right here, dump, and I always go in a main folder, and I press OK and click dump. It always give me that message that if it has a previous file, it will relocate it or overwrite it, and it is done. don't forget the SAM sys. There's always going to be two files, the SAM limited and SAM sys. And the location, you don't need to rechange it. It is already by default the previous location. Now all we need to do is click dump and press OK. Now you're done finishing the database dump of these files. So this is if you're just doing it at home. So if you're doing it in class, you need to give these files back to me as well, right, through the iDrive. I won't able to elaborate how you will drop the files, but I can show you how to zip the files. So when you're doing it in class, you can zip them as well. So on this computer that I'm working on, I don't have a 7-zip. I have a simple zip software. So before you dump it or give me the file, you want to make sure that all the files that you need to give me is there. So the database dump, you open it. Oh, not this one. This the one that I have is not on the desktop. It's under this folder. So when I go into a dump, see, that's why it's important is to check the file before you give it to me. So you see the dump is here. That's great. You go open the reports and see there are 5 reports, and I need to give the 5 reports as well. So the next step that I may ask you to do is once you finish your assignment, I'm going to ask you to zip these files. So you right click on WinZip, and if you have a 7-zip at the college, you click on that and you select the option that says add to that name of that folder. So you click that. What it's going to do is it's going to zip this file. You guys have done that in CH50. You have done that in the previous class as well. I'm sure this is something that you will do it very easily, but again, practice it if you're trying to see that you have an issue. Then you do the same thing for the report as well. You see a second option here, but I think in your at your college you will see that as a third option. Now you have these 2 folders. So once you finish, you can delete the other ones if you want to, but you don't need to, because it will clear that up once you restart your computer at the college. Once you finish, you will just copy these 2 files. You right click, select both the folders, the zip folders. You right click, copy, and then I'll give you a location of my iDrive on your computer. You go into iDrive, Dropbox, and you look for my name, Sharma TE, and then right click and paste these folders there. Okay, and that's how you will complete your assignment. Okay, so that's pretty much it what I have to tell you guys for this assignment. The next part of this assignment will be where I'm going to ask you to record transaction, and you will given this dump file to do the second part of this assignment, which will be just for practice, nothing to be marked, but you guys will do that on your own, and that will give you a practice for lesson 7 to lesson 6 to lesson 1 to 4 we did here. So lesson 5 to 8 will be the second part of this assignment, which will be considered as a homework, and you will do it from home. Okay, so this is it, and if you have any question, bring it to the class or send me a course message. Thank you. Take care.